I assume you're talking about the Gang of Eight bill, right?
Yeah, but there was a gang of eight, but there was really a gang of 68 of us voted for it, Democrats and Republicans.
So what are Democrats? I mean, there was a lot more in there just beyond money for border security and for fencing, not a wall. There was a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants. The DREAM Act was part of it as well. Do you think that this president, who in the past has rejected those things, would come around to a bill that looked like that today? I mean, he went after the Gang of Eight during the campaign.
I know, but I still will tell you this. Every time I've been in his presence, he's been very receptive to everything we've talked about that was in that bill. Except when we leave and the hard right comes after him, then we're back to square one.
Well, so how do you negotiate with that?
I'm just hoping that he basically comes to the understanding that you've got a House, which is a Democratic-controlled House, a Senate with a Republican control, and the two have to work together. We've got to find a pathway forward. DACA seems to be the one uniting grace that can bring everyone together. The people that want to be here for the right reason but came the wrong way, but want to be here and be productive, and get rid of the people that came here the wrong way for the wrong reason, get them out. And you have to have a secured border in order to achieve that. But that's what needs to be negotiated and talked about.
Are Democrats going to accept any version of that today with this president after everything that's happened in the last 3.5 years since he ran?
Oh, well, I would hope so. I said this, if you can't change your mind, you can't change anything, Katie. So you have to look at, the president is who he is, whether you voted for him or against him, whether you like him or not. Forget about the politics. But basically, we're dealing with the president of the United States. That's our job, to find a pathway forward. And whether you're a Democrat or Republican, as a senator or as a congressperson, you're sent here to do the best you can for your district or your state and your country. And if you forget that, then you're here for the wrong reason.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.